Celts living in ancient Asia? Wait a minute. Wasn't the ancient one Celtic? Wasn't she in Kamitic? Hold up. Why is Paul sending a letter to the ancient one? We just gonna keep going, man. I'm just saying, man. I'm just saying. So, from radio waves to visual spectrum, y'all gotta understand, at one point in time it was all radio. Everybody was crowded around the radio listening to the ball game, listening to skits and shows where everything was acoustical. You listened, you heard, like someone speaking. Heptapod A. Heptapod B is all visual. That's the TV. Abbott and Costello were at the forefront of that conversion because they started off on the radio and they were part of that whole transfer into the television realm. Okay? Next slide. All right, so why are they here? Back of the head, y'all. Back of the head. Cough. Next slide. That's why the ships were shaped like that. That's why their texture looked like a skull. Quick Moana moment. The Kakamora represents Eshu, the passage of the path, protector of the way. Yeshua, that's Eshu, Jesus, coconut head, coconut. When Moana and Maui encountered these cats, they blocked the passage. In order for them to go on their journey, they had to go through the path of the Kakamora in order to be granted into the ocean. All right?
And they did represent the pathway of home. Wow.
Oh, yeah.
Damn.
What was his name? Tamatoa, which was the crab at the bottom of the sea, once again Cancer energy, represents Olokun, whose treasures are hidden at the bottom of the ocean. All right? And they had this was like the hidden gem in the movie that would go right by you. But Moana had to trick this crab in order to help save Maui, so she held the heart of Tafiti up and it started glowing. So he was like, yo, because he loves shiny things. He's like into glitz and glamour and all types of stuff like that, like cancers are. Cancers like stuff like that. So he sees the light, he goes chasing it. She acts like she trips and drops it. He goes and digs after it. And when he picks it up, she has switched it out. She kept the heart of Tafiti in her pocket and she put bioluminescent algae there. So he was like, oh, wow. She used bioluminescent algae as a diversion. Bioluminescent algae is sea moss because bioluminescence has everything with being able to activate your luciferase so you can glow, so you can create biophotons at an alarming rate. Why would they talk about bioluminescent algae? Why would the treasure at the bottom of the ocean last statement be bioluminescent algae, y'all? And then they left. Like I said, y'all got to see this movie. Next slide. All right, so cough, back of the head. Just a quick little symbol, like I said, I like putting some images out there. Next slide. All right, so now I showed you the back of the head. Remember how they had to go in there? They had to get on the little stretcher thing and go up inside, right? And remember, the first times when they went in there was masculine energy because, as you see, the men had to hold her to carry her in. And it was a bunch of men around. All right? And it was the men that was responsible for the explosion because of that masculine energy. They was like, got to blow some up. But it was spiritual too because when you raise your kundalini up and you pass that area, an explosion takes place. Okay. And they tell you that you'll hear a popping or a loud bang. And that's what that explosion is because after that explosion, that's when things got thick. Next slide. All right? So the back of the head is where what sits at? The visual cortex, which is a rectangular shape area on the back of the head. Look at that. What shape is that, y'all?
Rectangle.
That's how they talk to the aliens. Okay? The occipital area. Back of the head. Next slide. Okay, so after they went up in the ship, all of a sudden, then they would jump, and when they jumped up, they landed on the wall, but when they landed on the wall, they were walking straight. And then when they walked straight on the wall, they came into the main area and it was on the ceiling. So that's telling you just all about dimensions, but most importantly, visual. They're telling you visual cortex, because when light comes into our eyes, everything is upside down. Just like them, walking in there. Vision, they trying to tell us something. Yeah, melanin. Melanin gives you the message. The melanin will give you the message. Next slide.
Right angle.
Yes, that right angle, very important. And the right angle is in Kamitic. If you notice a lot of bas reliefs in Kamitic, you'll see people walking in a procession, and then they bust a left turn. Like they bust a right. They take a left at Albuquerque, and you be like, what's going on? And that'd be that right angle. But yeah, these cats was up there. They wasn't liking how they was vibing, so they put a bomb up there, and they blew the boy up. And after they blew it up, they didn't let no more men on the ship. It's like, no, y'all don't get it. Y'all just keep on blowing stuff up, shooting and everything like that. She up here trying to talk with us like we could just bang y'all out. Y'all think y'all nukes gonna do something? You think the China man on the big ship gonna do something to me? I'm trying to talk to y'all. And this is the first movie where aliens came down and was like, yo, holla at me.
Yeah.
Every other time they want our resources, they're trying to kill us, we trying to kill them. You know what I'm saying? This time they like, yo, let's establish communication. Because that's all we got to do as people, is establish communication. You can't have a community without communication. Same thing. Next slide. All right, so the funny thing about this is that the ship had 3 alignments in the movie: vertical, horizontal, and diagonal. And that's because they were showcasing the science of the Pythagorean, or the Kamitic triangle rather, of the side, base, hypotenuse of a saw, a set, and hey root. The 3, 4, 5, a squared, b squared, to c squared. Okay? So if you see right here, this is the original. This is when all the men were allowed to be on the ship, when it was vertical. Who's vertical?
Sorry.
Huh? Next slide. So after it blew up, they sent down a little pillar. They sent the pillar, the woman's pillar, they sent her pillar down, and she got on there. They brought him in there, and they talked. And the deep thing is, she was talking to Costello because she was like, where's Abbott? She was like, Abbott's in the death process. Who's in the death process? Oh, he be in the death process, don't he? So the 2 women got to talk. And when the 2 women got to talk, she got rid of her, and then the ship went this way. Then after she did everything she was supposed to do and saved the world, the ship went that way. And then dissipated. Why did they do that?
Cloud.
Yeah, 3, 4, 5. I'm about to show you. Next slide. Boom. You see? It's flat. Boom, 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 boom. Hey, Ru, he who is above. All right. Next slide. All right. So, talking about cancer, June 6, 1977, Branford Marcel Young. He is the cinematographer from Louisville, Kentucky. They go that Lewis again. But this is the reason we saw what we saw. He's the cinematographer. He was the eye. He was the visual cortex. A Cancer from Louisville. Next slide. All right. The shells in memory in relation to family was a Cancer energy, and time is Capricorn. Tropic of Cancer and Capricorn. This is the tropical region where the melanin is most productive. They both represent 23 degrees. If added will equal 46. These are chromosome references. The crustacean cell by the mountains in Montana, which means mountain. Montana means mountain. Also shows the Cancer-Capricorn relationship, the family and career energies also. So the mountains represents Capricorn, as well as the aspect of it looking like bone, but then it being called the shells. That's what the Army called them. The military referred to the ships as shells. All right? So, and then even with consciousness, with spheres, they represent shells. You know, and then I talked earlier about the 46 with the Galatians. Next slide. All right, so in Montana is the Stillwater Igneous Complex. Anybody ever heard of that? This is a large, huge mountainous region that is riddled with nothing but gold, platinum, and palladium. And the Stillwater Corporation is a business that extracts all the noble metals out of Montana. These are the same metals that takes us into higher consciousness. This was where the movie occurred at. It was in Montana. Stillwater Igneous Complex. Look it up. Anybody need some platinum or palladium? That's where you need to go. And anywhere you find platinum and palladium, you will find gold. Best believe. Next slide. All right. So Wolfram which is where they learned about making the language, is a mathematical program that you can get on Mac. They utilize in order to make the language. But this guy got like, you just need to look him up. Look up Wolfram equation, and all that stuff. A general multi-paradigm programming language developed by Wolfram Research is the programming language of Mathematica and the Wolfram Programming Cloud. It emphasizes symbolic computation, functional programming, and rule-based programming, and can employ arbitrary structures at data. Okay? The principle of linguistic relativity holds that the structure of a language affects its speaker's worldview or cognition, popularly known as the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, or Whorfianism. The principle is often defined to include two versions. The strong version says that the language determines thought, and that linguistic categories limit and determine cognitive categories. Whereas the weak version says that linguistic categories and usage only influence thought and decision. Long story short, what they're saying is language influences consciousness. So based on how we speak, determines how we think. And how we think determines how we live our life. And if we don't understand the language we're speaking, then we're constantly casting spells that we're the victim of magic. Next slide. All right. A big concept in the movie was called non-zero sum game. Because she was having these memories of a child that she never had, you know, that died. It was deep. And if you study this pathway of cough, like, it explains like why the child died, and then she died of cancer. You know, it's all there. But the child was trying to find out what's another way of saying, you know, two people, you know, kind of like tie. She was like, not a tie, and she was like a win-win or something. She was like, no, not that. And she was like, your father would know, da-da-da-da. And then she was like, zero-sum game. Okay? So a non-zero sum game describes a situation in which interacting parties aggregate gains and losses can be less than or more than zero. A zero-sum game is also called a strictly competitive game, while a non-zero sum game can be either competitive or non-competitive. This is like the basis of business, because this deals with something called game theory. Anybody watch football games, basketball games, wonder why they're non-profit, non-zero? Let's go to the next slide. Oh, my bad. Go back. So this book, Non-Zero, is written by Robert Wright. You can look him up on YouTube. He got a couple videos where he goes into this whole concept. But this zero-sum game thing is a way, like she was talking about actuaries? Yeah, she was talking about actuaries where you take data and then you can predict things happening. They do the same thing with the non-zero. Next slide. All right, so a zero-sum game in game theory and economic theory, a zero-sum game is a mathematical representation of a situation in which each participant's gain or loss of utility is exactly balanced by the losses or gains of utility of the other participants. If the total gains of participants are added up, and the total, I think I cut myself off, and the total, if the total and gain, and the total is zero, that's what it's supposed to be. If you add up all the gains and losses of both sides, it's supposed to equal zero-sum game, so it looks like, you know, everybody wins. You know, it all balances out type deal. But zero-sum game and non-zero-sum game are two different things, where the non-zero-sum actually can afford positive results in the future where everybody really is winning. And here is just the illusion that everybody's winning. Right. It's really somebody else who's gaining. All right? Next slide. And let me show you how we got it going on right now. We got the game theory and the zero-sum game going on right now because the president-elect is known as Trump. Okay, what is a Trump card? Trump is used in game theory. What is his vice president called? Pence. The number one game in game theory is matching pennies. Yeah, get ready for business in 2017, y'all. That's the language. Business is going to be the language. Okay? The game is real estate, property. This guy got hotels everywhere. He got relationships everywhere. So everybody could be talking whatever they want about him. He's doing what he want to do. It's called the President of the United States. who better than the president? Like it ain't my country. I'm not with that stuff.
Right.
Like Obama didn't do nothing for me. He never spoke to me. He didn't try to do anything for me. He was for America. This is America. You know what I mean? We ain't even gonna talk about how they told us in Back to the Future with Biff.
Well, yeah.
Nah, Biff became president, and he had like casinos and hotels. He was Trump. He even had the comb over and everything. They told us.